Sign the sale papers today, Elena said, slamming a document onto the coffee table. Or the government takes the house on Friday. I was still wearing my funeral coat. My father wasn't even cold yet. The paper slid toward me like a threat dressed as bureaucracy. Final notice of seizure. Bold letters. Red stamp. Urgent tone. Elena didn't stop there. She pointed to the man standing by the window. Tall. Polished. Smiling like he already owned the place. Meet Julian, she said sweetly. Your father's secret son. The words landed wrong. Too clean. Too rehearsed. He's the only cash buyer willing to save the family name, she continued. If you don't sign, everything your father built is gone. I picked up the notice. My hands didn't shake. Because panic is a luxury. And I couldn't afford it. Not with a woman like Elena. I let my eyes scan the page slowly. Not reading the threat. Feeling the paper. The weight was wrong. Too light. Too smooth. The font bothered me next. Modern. Slightly rounded. Not the government serif used 3 years ago. To anyone else, it was nothing. To me, it was screaming. I wasn't looking at a debt. I was holding a forgery. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a manufactured crisis. Designed to rush me into signing before I could think. Before I could check. Before I could audit. But I didn't expose her. Because if you confront a predator too early, they don't confess. They adapt. So I did the only smart thing. I broke. On purpose. My shoulders slumped. My voice trembled. I asked why my father never told me. Elena sighed. A perfect sigh. Practiced. He was too proud, she said softly. He made me promise to hide it. To protect his dignity. It was emotional ransom. She was using my father's memory. To explain away fraud. I swallowed hard. Told her I couldn't do this today. I begged for 1 week. Just one. 1 week to pack. 1 week to say goodbye. Then I'd sign anything. I saw it. The flash of triumph in her eyes. Sharp. Hungry. Fine, she said. 1 week. Not a day more. I walked out with my head down. Defeated. Broken. Exactly how she wanted me to look. But the moment the oak doors closed behind me, the grief shut off. And the audit began. Because that house wasn't just real estate. It was an archive. And Elena had no idea I was about to read every page. That night, the estate was unnaturally quiet. No music. No voices. Just the sound of old wood breathing. I walked the halls alone, my footsteps syncing with memories I hadn't touched in years. Elena thought silence meant defeat. She was wrong. Silence is where the truth speaks loudest. I stopped in the doorway of the nursery. The paint was chipped near the floor, but the door frame was still there. Unchanged. Waiting. I ran my fingers along the notches carved into the wood. My height. Every birthday. Marked by my father's messy handwriting. Celeste, age 5. Celeste, age 10. Celeste, age 18. Proof. To Elena, this house was an asset. $3.5 million waiting to be liquidated. To me, it was a museum. The only place on earth that still remembered my mother. The only witness left to who I had been before Elena arrived and started erasing. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just selling a house. She was deleting history. Sanding down door frames. Painting over evidence. Turning a life into cash. She didn't want the walls. She wanted the silence after they were gone. I stood there in the dark, my hand still resting on the mark from my 10th birthday. And made a promise. Not to her. To the house. I'm not fighting for money. I'm fighting the eraser. I turned away from my father's study. That room would be sanitized first. Instead, I climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. Hot. Dusty. Forgotten. This was where real history hides. Boxes stacked like unmarked graves. Tax returns. Old envelopes. Canceled checks. Hours passed. Then I found it. A small box. 1995. Canceled personal checks. My father's handwriting. Meticulous. And there it was. Repeated payments to a rural hospital. 3 hours away. Memo line. Medical expenses. My stomach went cold. Elena claimed she met my father in 2005. So why was he paying her medical bills 10 years earlier? And why here? I kept digging. And that's when I found the letters. Unopened. Intercepted. Friends asking why he'd stopped responding. Drafts from my father asking why I never called. That's when the full picture snapped into focus. She didn't just steal his money. She stole his reality. She isolated him. Filtered his world. Fed him lies until she became his only truth. That's how she got him to sign. Not with force. With fiction. I sat on the attic floor, dust clinging to my clothes, and realized this wasn't inheritance drama. It was psychological imprisonment. I took photos of the checks. And I knew exactly what I needed next. Because if the past could prove Elena was lying, the present was about to bury her. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't tired. I was focused. I used my professional credentials to access the vital records database. Not hacking. Not guessing. Legal doors open differently when you know where the hinges are. I ordered a rush search for birth records from that rural county. Same year as the hospital checks. While I waited, I turned to the immediate threat. The tax seizure notice. I didn't argue with it. I didn't analyze it emotionally. I verified it. I called the county assessor's office directly. The woman on the phone sounded bored until I gave her the parcel number. Then she paused. "Ma'am," she said, tapping keys. "The property taxes are paid in full. There is no lien. No seizure. No pending action." I thanked her politely and hung up. The notice was a complete forgery. Elena hadn't panicked. She had fabricated panic. Next, I followed the money. Over the past 5 years, my father had paid $1.2 million to a company called Heritage Restoration LLC. Elena claimed it was for critical repairs. But the house told a different story. Peeling paint. Water stains. No structural work. I pulled the public business filings. The registered agent wasn't a contractor. It was Julian. Same P.O. box. Same county. The pieces locked together. This wasn't debt. This wasn't renovation. It was embezzlement, clean, methodical, disguised as maintenance. Then the courier arrived. Certified envelope. Cold paper. Inside was the long-form birth certificate. Mother, Elena Vance. Father, unknown. Date of birth, November 12, 1995. Same year. Same timeline. Julian wasn't my father's secret son. He was Elena's. She hadn't brought him to honor a dying wish. She brought him to drain the accounts. The DNA test she'd waived at the funeral? A prop. The story? A lie polished for speed. I laid everything out on the table. Fake tax notice. LLC filings. Canceled checks. Birth certificate. A dossier thick enough to end lives. The week was almost over. And Elena had planned a celebration. Because the house wasn't being sold quietly. She was about to sign her confession in public. Elena didn't wait until the deadline. She turned it into a spectacle. A memorial gala. The estate filled with luxury cars and people who smelled opportunity before they smelled grief. Champagne. Soft music. Predators in tailored suits. She called it a tribute. It was a signing ceremony. Lawyers hovered. The buyer waited with a check big enough to erase guilt. Elena stood elevated in the ballroom, radiant in practiced sorrow. She spoke about sacrifice. About protecting the family name. About my father's final wish. Then she gestured to me. The room went silent. Every eye followed as I stepped onto the platform. I held the pen. I held the microphone. And I smiled. "I'm ready to sign," I said calmly. "But since there's no will, the title insurer needs one last formality." I placed the affidavit on the podium. An affidavit of heirship. Simple. Standard. All they had to do was swear, under penalty of perjury, that Julian was my father's biological son. The notary nodded. Elena hesitated. Just for a breath. Then she looked at the buyer. The money. Greed finished the sentence. She signed. Julian followed. The stamp hit the page with a sound that echoed through the room. Thud. That was the moment. I gave the signal. The screen behind us flickered. My father's tribute photo disappeared. Replaced by the birth certificate. Mother, Elena Vance. Father, unknown. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Slide after slide followed. Real tax records. Fake notices. LLC filings tied to Julian. I turned back to the microphone. You didn't find a son, I said evenly. You hired one. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't shout. It documents. The police stepped forward from the side door. The handcuffs closed first on Elena, then on Julian. The gala became a crime scene. Silence swallowed the room. But justice wasn't finished yet, because the house had one final reckoning to deliver. The sirens faded long before the silence did. Guests slipped out without eye contact. The buyer vanished. The champagne went untouched. What was meant to be a victory lap collapsed into evidence bags and whispered panic. I stood alone in the ballroom. No applause. No closure. Just space. For the first time in months, the house felt lighter. I walked to my father's study. Elena had planned to sell the books, the maps, the portraits. I closed the door behind me and poured a glass of his favorite red wine. The chair creaked when I sat. Same sound it made when I was a child, pretending to be important. Outside, flashing lights painted the walls. Inside, it was calm. Elena was facing charges: fraud, embezzlement, perjury. Julian with her. The house was safe. Not frozen in time. Preserved. They had called me emotional, difficult, an obstacle. But all I had done was refuse to panic. Refuse to rush. Refuse to trade memory for money. I wasn't lonely. I was surrounded by proof. Proof of love, of history, of a life that mattered before greed arrived wearing sympathy. I lifted the glass toward the window. To truth, I whispered. And to the house that kept it. Outside, the driveway emptied. What remained was mine to protect. But here's what most people miss. This wasn't revenge. It was survival. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I throw her out the moment I saw that fake tax notice? Why did I wait a whole week? Why pretend to cooperate? Because panic is what predators feed on. Elena didn't win by being smarter. She won by making people rush. That fake seizure notice wasn't about money. It was about fear. Fear makes people stop checking details. Fear makes them sign things they don't understand. Fear makes them give up control. I didn't wait because I was weak. I waited because I was auditing. Every manipulator runs on the same fuel. Chaos. So I starved her of it. I checked paper texture, fonts, parcel numbers, bank records. While she celebrated early, I built a case she couldn't escape. Then I let greed do the rest. Greedy people always think they're smarter than the law. They always believe the signature is the finish line. It never is. The affidavit wasn't a trick. It was a mirror. And they signed it. Publicly. Legally. Irreversibly. I didn't destroy them. They documented themselves. That's the lesson. You don't need to scream to be powerful. You don't need revenge to win. You just need patience, receipts, and silence. If something feels rushed, it's because someone benefits from your confusion. Slow down. Audit. Let the truth surface. And if you ever have to stand alone to protect what matters, remember this. You are not dramatic. You are not difficult. You are not heartless. You are awake. And once you see clearly, no one can sell your life out from under you again.